Well, with a few remaining roster spots open for the Philadelphia 76ers, I'm available. Kyle's available. We're available.
I will take a minimum deal, baby.
Yes, sir. Right here for the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm sure Derek will do the same thing. So would Brianna. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast on a Friday here with Kyle and Bree and all of you as we hang out and talk about the remaining free agents that are still out there. There are still a few that are lingering right now out there, free, looking for a job. We'll get to Indeed a little bit later. Maybe their resume is not strong enough where they need to, get some Indeed in there and get the hiring going because these guys do have some name. There are some names out there that we can talk about how they might fit with the Philadelphia 76ers. Is it more about the talent? Is it more about the fit with where we are so late in the process right now on July 19th? Damn, it seems like it was just June 30th that we started this whole thing. It's July 19th, and it's pretty much
Vegas
done.
time is not real time. As we found out the hard way out there.
It is not. So, of course, as we go through the show, we want to know who you like. You're always willing to share who you want them to go and target. So we definitely want to hear from you throughout the show of what we talk about. We'll get into Joel Embiid, Team USA, some things that Steve Kerr, the head coach, had to say as they prepare for yet another game on Saturday. Maybe they're getting some reinforcements and a few other things around the association that we can discuss in general as we run through this week, as we wrap up the week on a Friday. As you just said, Vegas is not real. It's not a real time, but we have done the right allotment of shows where we're good to go.
We did.
Even though
I did see some comments from our guy Michael in the chat about why is Derek allowed to take a vacation? Well, we're all allowed to take vacations. Yeah. These guys held the fort down for me when I went to the Dominican with my wife earlier this year. So, everybody gets a little bit of R&R away from the show, away from the crazies in the chat that we love, away from super producer Bree. Hopefully super producer Bree gets a vacation coming up here soon. She has earned it for sure. But yes, we're all happy here that Derek gets some well-deserved time off after, well, I can't even say after dealing with the 115-degree heat because he stayed out there.
Yes.
He's a complete maniac.
Yeah, he's a maniac. Yeah, I don't know how he does it. But let's run through a couple of these names. There are a lot. So we can go through quite a bit of these names that we've discussed in the past that, quite frankly, we're surprised that a few of them are still out there. We thought the same thing with, what was the name that we were talking about recently and they just went off the board? Chris Dunn.
Chris Dunn went off the board.
We'll get to him a little bit later, but he was one. There was another one I can't remember right now because there are so many, but we will talk about them. Campaign also, we'll speak about him for a minute or so a little bit later because I know Winona was questioning if we had discussed it. Derek and Rich did on Tuesday's show. Kyle and I had not. So where would you like to start in terms of, not necessarily in any particular order, but names in general where at whatever price it might be on a minimum deal right now, you're okay with Daryl Morey in the front office targeting that particular player?
Okay, so first I want to just lay out my expectations from here, right? I know everybody is concerned. I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of fans are concerned about size and rebounding as it stands right now, that there's not a true power forward on this roster. And I think that will color a lot of people's perception of like, hey, what are they going to do or what should they do? Who should they bring in?
Yep.
I would tell you, don't expect the Sixers to use these last few roster spots on a need. I would think at this point, and I think Daryl Morey's track record has shown this, they will go for whoever they believe the best guys they can get at the minimum level are. They might not be the cleanest fits. They might just be similar-ish players to guys they have now. And for example, if they go for a bench shooter, a bench scorer type, somebody closer to an Eric Gordon, but that's the best guy that they can get out of, the fifth, like let's say there are 25 possibilities. If it's the number one ranked guy on their free agent big board, they will, in my estimation, prioritize that over the guy who's like 15th, but is a better fit for what they need. Because I think the way Daryl Morey and the front office look at it as they have until the deadline to really put the whole team together. They have the spine of the team. They have the 3 stars. They have I would say their most important role players. And they're going to see, okay, what does it look like when we have a starting group of Joel, Tyrese, Paul, Caleb, and Kelly and the bench pieces that they have to support that. What does Jared McCain look like over the first, let's say, 2-3 months of the season, and how much can he give us? How much does Kyle Lowry have left? What do you need in a lineup when Andre Drummond is in the game versus Joel Embiid? So I think that would be where I would start, is that they are strictly going to look at this as who's the best possible talent they can get. Now, who is the best possible talent in our eyes is the question. So I don't know that he is at this point. I fear that we used him as the image, but that Gordon Hayward is pretty washed at this point, like has clearly taken multiple steps back physically. And I'm not sure where his head is at in terms of wanting to play or fit into a role after spending significant time in Charlotte, where he was a pretty important piece there on a bad team. Like, what are his priorities? But if you look at some of the other needs they have on this roster, they just don't have enough passing, I think, is one of the things that I've been harping on throughout the offseason. So while he is older, while he does have defensive concerns at this point, I think skill set wise, he makes sense as a connective piece, a guy. And I know that Oklahoma City was hoping this, and then he basically got nailed to the bench once they actually got to the games that matter. But I think if you can get a wing or forward size player who can score, who can hit spot up threes, who is a capable playmaker off the dribble to some extent, right? Like, he's not blowing by guys basically at all anymore, but someone who's a functional passer, anyone who fits in that connective mold is, I'd say, high priority if they're available. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, I think he's going to be available for cheap because of those concerns that we have. So I think as far as minimum targets go, he's one of the best realistic options left. And if he's ready to just say, I'll do whatever it takes to try to chase a ring, like as a guy who's probably nearing the end of his career, then that's someone I think you probably want to get on board.
It's a great name. My question, as soon as you say that, if he's ready to do that, because when he was traded to Oklahoma City, Sam Presti, most people were looking at it like, why are you going after Gordon Hayward? He seems washed. But Sam Presti, with the great track record that he seems to have out there and evaluating even the deeper parts of the bench to just help out, you understand that's exactly why Sam Presti went out there to add a veteran player to that young group to do exactly what Kyle just laid out. The problem is when the season ended and he played some, not enough, of course, to his liking, there were those reports out there that he was unhappy with the role that he had. His minutes,
even in the regular season, got like cut in half compared to what he was playing in Charlotte and what he ended up playing in OKC.
And they like to play up the speed. They like to play with pace. So was that something that he just cannot keep up with that anymore? Yeah. We know Charlotte was that way with LaMelo and how he runs that team.
They'll play slower here is one reason that maybe it's a better fit for him individually.
Sure. And how much is the ball going to be in his hands? How much does he need? How much time does he need to just feel like he's involved and being a part of the team? So that would be my only question, because I've always been a Gordon Hayward fan. Liked him since Butler. Did not know he was going to turn into that player, but when he did, damn, that's a good player right there at 6'6", 6'7", that can do everything, turning himself into an all-star level player for what he has become. Since the injury, of course, he cannot stay healthy. Now he's on the floor, he's off the floor, he's on the floor, he's off the floor, off the floor, off the floor, he's off the floor for quite a bit of time. The player itself, though, at a minimum, at this late stage of free agency, now understanding what his worth is in the NBA. He's not going overseas. He still wants to be in the NBA. He's going to have to go into a training camp and earn that spot. And if he does believe that this will be the spot with Nick Nurse, with this group, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, and others around him, that he can fit with some older veteran players that works best stylistically for what he can do, to your point of the slower pace because of Joel Embiid. Can that work out with those two guys, a two-man game in a pick and roll when he comes off the bench, and how he does have that size and the shooting ability, quite frankly, to be able to still knock down those shots even this deep into his career? Gordon Hayward is the nice one, but he has to, as Kyle alluded to it, as he said it,
it's the one
has to understand that he is not the Gordon Hayward that was the all-star, that was the franchise player, that got the big money from Boston and then Charlotte. He's not that guy anymore, and we always talk about it. The last ones to know that they are no longer that player are them. So was it this situation in OKC where he finally realizes that, okay, I have to accept who I am in this league right now and be that person, be that player for this particular organization that I'm going to? He can come in and do that in the spot, but he has to accept it and understand it that he's no longer playing 35 minutes. He might only play 15.
If he's willing to buy into that, great catch and shoot player.
Yes.
Lower volume catch and shoot guy. But so if you're gaming out the rotation a little bit, maybe I shouldn't say great. He's been great at times. He was great last season, but he's not as high volume of a 3-point shooter that you want. But if you put him in the ecosystem where Joel Embiid is the guy and you're playing in, let's say he's in the lineups where Maxey is on the bench, maybe even Paul George is on the bench, and you have something like a Kyle Lowry, Oubre, Hayward, and fill somebody else in there. Hayward's ability to hit spot up threes, but also if on a blow by, he's not getting by guys just like from a standstill, beating people in isolation.
Yep.
But he's a credible enough shooter that guys will attack him, and he's got a functional handle still, so he can get to the basket after beating that closeout. And because of the passing ability, he might be able to create, like, Joel gets doubled, defense is in rotation, and then Hayward on the drive is able to hit Joel Embiid in the scramble for some easy points at the basket. And just having a little bit of secondary creation, secondary playmaking on top of the shooting would be nice. You have to be reasonable about what he has to offer on defense. And again, him having to be willing to play 10 to 15 minutes a game. But I think, frankly, given what happened with OKC, so he went from 32 minutes a game-ish in Charlotte
last season,
wow, to 17 minutes in the regular season for OKC. He played in 7 playoff games, averaged under 7 minutes a game for the Thunder.
We watched a lot of those OKC games.
Yes.
He was in, he was out. And he was touching the ball, passing as part of the offense, and he never saw it again.
Yeah.
And that's where you can understand the frustration that does come into that piece. But if he comes here, Joel Embiid's going to have the rock. So is Tyrese Maxey if he's on the floor with those two. If he's sharing some time with Paul George, you just wonder, okay, is he going to be out there with maybe Andre Drummond, where a screen and roll with him is a little bit different, or playing out there with Kyle Lowry or Jared McCain, whoever it might be at that point. What's it going to look like? And is it going to be more than that 7 minutes that he was clearly unhappy about? The minutes that he had in the regular season, all right, maybe he was okay with that. But when it dropped down to 7 in the postseason where things were really going after it and trying to get, he was not happy, and you can tell. And then again, those reports that came out at the end of the year, that is something that's going to be, I'm sure, right there in front of mind for Gordon Hayward, his representation, as they try to find a spot for this upcoming season.
Okay, so let's move on to another one. Who's somebody that's got your attention right now?
So for me right now, by the way, I wanted to say this as you pointed that out. Brian Pumper says too many old guys. He would be another old guy in
I
this
actually
spot.
think they have a decent blend right now. I mean, yes, if you could get all 28-year-old guys or
like
27,
OKC.
28,
Right, yeah.
that'd be awesome. Or even a little bit younger. I think the problem is that those guys tend to be good and expensive. So we're talking about minimum players. There's a reason these guys are still available this deep into free agency.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going with a younger player, 25. He'll be 26 when the season is already underway. And I'm going to your point when we're just looking at talent. And we're just talking about talent, scoring in general. Because if Kelly Oubre, who we talked about coming off the bench and giving you that scoring punch, he's in a starting group. So if you're going to have somebody coming off the bench to score, we don't know that Jared McCain can do that just yet. I'm looking at Lonnie Walker, of course, the local product from Reading. Last season with the Brooklyn Nets, he averaged just under 10 points at 9.7. He shot the ball overall from the floor 43% from three. He attempted in the 16 attempts a game that he had. That was a projection there. 9.7. He shot 47% from the field overall, and 42% from the field overall. And from three, he shot 38% on 4.7 attempts a night. He averaged 17.
And that's been the big variable for him, I think.
Yes.
People liked his creative talent coming out of college and his athleticism. But the question was, will this guy shoot?
He can shoot much better now, and he gets a pretty good volume up. And he did that with the Nets in 58 games, 17 minutes per for Lonnie Walker. So he's not playing over 20 minutes a game, and he's still giving you that 10. He's getting these shots off where he's getting off 8.5 shots a night for the Brooklyn Nets last season. He had some starting roles with the Lakers the year before, playing 56 games. He averaged 11. The 3 years prior to last season, he averaged double figures, 11, 12, and 11.7 for the San Antonio Spurs and the Los Angeles Lakers. Last season, just under 10 with the Brooklyn Nets. He's still out there. He's still young. The athleticism, again, we talk about that still being a bit of an issue on this team. You add some more of that with Ricky Council, Kelly Oubre, Paul George, even at 34, and including Caleb Martin in there, with Joel Embiid being Joel Embiid, Adem Bona. More athleticism, more scoring with that second unit coming off the bench. Lonnie Walker, I still like it. 6'4", not a great passer, but a willing passer. One, though, that when he does get into his zone, he can fill it up in bunches right there coming off the bench for any particular team. So as we look at an older player with some shot creation for others and the shooting with Gordon Hayward, I go younger at 25, will be 26 during the season, and I look at Lonnie Walker. What do you think?
I like him. I think the problem for him, I would say more so than Hayward, he's someone that should be looking for, I'm going somewhere with opportunity, right? I think Lonnie coming here would be good for the Sixers just because the talent bet is better than most of the guys you're going to be able to get. I think he could go to a rebuilding team and, once again, get a decent amount of touches and say, look, this is my skill set. I can shoot. Last year, he on almost 5 attempts per game. He's making 38% of his threes. He can be that instant offense guy off the bench. Even if it's to another contender or contending hopeful, I think there's just a clearer path for him to play elsewhere. But again, anytime you can create a shot for yourself and score with not great efficiency, but at least okay efficiency as a bench guy, there's value for that on any team. So I like Lonnie. I think there were some concerns in it because when he was in the draft, there were some people who were interested in, potentially Lonnie being here. He's from Reading and all that. And there were some concerns about maybe he needs to get away from home for a little bit and kind of, you always hear that about local kids, right? Like, can they handle all there's a lot of loaded words like entourage or things like that, but just like all the hangers on, like people you grew up with, family members who are just too close as you come out of high school and college and make the jump to the league. I think he's now, having been in the league for a while, having played he's with the Spurs for a few years. That's a great organization to kind of get your feet under you. Had a good year in LA. Frankly, I'm surprised that he's basically been a minimum guy now,
I just don't think he's going to get a long-term deal at this part of the free agent period.
There's a disconnect for me between when I watch him and when I see what he's capable of doing and what the league has to this point determined that he's worth, right? It might just take that one great opportunity with the team. Maybe this is just the reality of the new NBA, right? Where some of these guys that before would have gotten a bit of a bumper in payment. But look, we can also say he's 6'4". He's a shooting guard, basically. He's not much of a creator for other people. And defensively, not the best. So how much do you value an instant offense guy? On a minimum, I love it. So I think I would take him on this team, and you figure it out later. Worst comes to worst, you can always trade him. It's a guy on a minimum with shot creation talent will be easy enough to move at the deadline. My suspicion is he'll go somewhere where there's a clearer path to playing time. Because if they're going to prioritize the guys that are already there, they're going to play Lowry. It's a different skill set. He's a backup point guard. Guy's going to run the offense. They're going to develop McCain as that, secondary guard, shooting guard, however you want to categorize him. And then they're just going to play a lot of wings. They're going to play Oubre. They're going to play Caleb Martin.
Eric Gordon.
They're going to play Eric Gordon, who's at the same position. And I think probably my guess is to come here, you got a little bit of a promise with regards to his role and how much he's going to play. So I'd like Lonnie. I don't think that's super realistic.
Yeah, and the other piece that I look at was just looking back at Kelly Oubre from last season. It's not September or late August where you're signing Kelly Oubre, and in this case, Lonnie Walker. It's looking at opportunity that Kelly Oubre had a season ago and came in here, made the most of it, and also got a 2-year deal. He was also a player that his reputation is totally different from what Lonnie Walker's is in terms of is this guy a team guy and all of that? You don't hear that about Lonnie Walker, but for whatever reason, as Kyle said, maybe the market is kind of set of what the league is telling us who he is. Players might look to, as you mentioned, all right, well, where can I go? Can I go to a spot and boost my value? Can I go to a place where I'm going to play a little bit, if not a lot, play a little bit, where I can still be impactful enough? And does him in a winning situation where the Lakers at the very end, not all that great, and then Brooklyn last season, not at all. And coming into Philadelphia, would that be the case for Lonnie Walker? Can he handle being at home? Can he look at and talk to the front office before making a decision like that and understanding what his role might be? Having that competition against Eric Gordon, Jared McCain, and maybe even Kyle Lowry just a little bit to get on the floor, get some meaningful minutes, some meaningful run for Nick Nurse's staff where he can go out there and be an important piece for a championship contending team. Very curious to see where he ends up. He's a talent. And as we said, if we're looking at it on simply adding talent, they could use that type of talent still on a minimum here this late in free agency. I would look at Lonnie Walker. We have a ton of names to get to.
We have way more to get to.
So we'll get to them. And we also, when we get back, I will tell you as we talk about these players, I'll run to Kyle real fast and you all of the names that are currently on the roster so we can look at how many spots they have available as we throw these names out there here on the PHLY Sixers podcast.
And guys, I just want to tell you today about our friends at Rite Aid, their refreshery line of beverages and products. It's real hot out, as we've been talking about all week. Yes. It was hot in Vegas, but it didn't get much better coming back here with the heat and humidity. And Rite Aid Refreshery, they have, as I laid out earlier this week, I never knew there would be this many types of water when I got older. But, buddy, they've got purified water, spring water, electrolyte, distilled, and alkaline bottled water, plus flavored waters, coconut water. That coconut water packs an array of essential nutrients, fat-free, gluten-free, non-GMO, less than 1% sugar. They also have single-serve iced tea, juice, and lemonade sweetened with real sugar and no preservatives. You love to hear that. We love our tasty but healthy beverages around here. And by the way, they got plenty of juices: pineapple, cranberry, apple, strawberry, lemonade, many other flavors. They're great for use every day just by themselves, or you can use them as mixers for cocktails and mocktails. And by the way, they also have some cold pressed juices for you fancy lads and lasses out there, crafted from 100% fruits and vegetables, no added sugars, preservatives, or artificial flavors, and packaged in eco-friendly glass bottles, which reduces plastic waste. We love the environment around here. So guys, it's important to stay hydrated, especially during the summer months. Get your refreshment delivered. Shop online at riteaid.com/shop for same-day delivery or buy online, pick up in store of refreshery products.
And as you do that and you go to Rite Aid to make sure you spend that money to get that water that you need and the other products, you make sure you have to have the money to do it. And you want to make sure your finances are right. And we've been telling you about our great friends from TrueMark Financial. And now they have their TrueMark Financial Rewards Visa credit card, which is, again, very beneficial. You're going on vacation. One of my friends is about to go on vacation, actually leaving tomorrow. And we discussed, hey, you want to make sure maybe you have that great credit card as you're going out of the country to make sure that you are good to go with your finances and you're not worried. It's safe. It's convenient. It's right there for you. Earn rewards for each purchase using TrueMark Financial's Rewards Visa credit card and redeem them for travel and retail gift cards. I was trying to tell them to give them the heads up. Build credit through timely payments and low credit utilization. Enjoy fraud protection with features like zero liability when you're out of the country. Sometimes things can get a little tricky. You're worried about where you're scanning your card and if it's going through the right places and there's no fraud involved. Well, you don't have to worry about, again, that with TrueMark. Traditional savings accounts, basic savings account offering a place to deposit funds, earn interest, and withdraw money as needed. The money market account combines features of savings and checking accounts offering high interest rates and limited check writing capabilities. Easy access to your money when you need it most. TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA and is an equal opportunity lender. For more information, visit TrueMark.com/PHLY. All right.
It's looking like the The future may be bright in here, Devon.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yes.
Is the future bright? Is it bright for us now that we're back from Las Vegas?
It is kind of bright. And look, we saw the summer Sixers. They're bright, but there are also a few others that it might be bright for as well.
So, guys, let's put on our rose-colored glasses and explain to the people why the future is bright for, drum roll please, Luke Kennard. Brought to you by Shady Rays. Head to shadyrays.com. Use code PHLY at checkout or 35% off of polarized sunglasses. So we've had the name Luke Kennard come up on this show, obviously.
Not today for a reason.
I don't think that we properly went over how good of a shooter that he's been over the last, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons or so. He, as a career, is shooting about 44% from three.
The guy
in
can
the NBA.
flat out shoot the basketball.
And that's on over 4.5 attempts per game. He was up last year at like 6.1. Now, granted, small sample, he was hurt, and that's been one of the durability's been a big concern for him. And so he's one of the logical guys to target for the Sixers, right? Anybody who can be a good volume shooter, a willing volume shooter. And he has a little bit of off the bounce game, right? Or has shown it in the past. He's not just like a standstill type of guy. From time to time, he'll beat a closeout, get to the basket, all that good stuff. Unfortunately, we received some news today.
Sorry, PHLY. Check
courtesy
this out.
of Woj over at ESPN. So the Grizzlies traded Zaire Williams to Brooklyn. That's a name that's been out there that they were looking to move him this week. Zaire was traded with a 2030 second-round pick and some draft rights to a player whose name I cannot cannot pronounce.
That guy.
And who did they get back? They got Diakite, right, from the Nets.
Yep.
They were looking to create some salary cap flexibility, and according to Woj, without that guaranteed money on Williams' contract, they're now working to re-sign Kennard in Memphis. So a guy who looked like, if he wasn't the best player available, he was one of the best names available. It looks like Kennard is going to be off the board shortly. But certainly, if you could somehow convince him to take a minimum, that level of shooting is worth a hell of a lot more than that to me.
Yep, absolutely. And we've, as Kyle said, we've talked about him a ton. But the concerns about his defense, the shooting is what it is. It's fantastic. But on the other end of the floor, that's been a point of concern for the teams that he's been on.
Yes.
And as we focus on him being let go by the Memphis Grizzlies and that option that the guy cannot stay in front of people. Yeah. And he tends to be injured as well. As a lot of people are pointing out here, even our guy Al pointing out that the guy just always hurt. But he can shoot. So sometimes you overlook that, especially when we're talking about it at this spot, this late stage of free agency. You're like, all right, you're just bringing a guy in and you give him an opportunity. If he's out there on the floor and he knocks him down, we'll bring up another name that for that very reason, because you can hit shots. And
so that future does seem bright for Luke Kennard. He's making a little more money than the minimum, and good for him.
Stay in Memphis. You get Ja Morant back for the full season. The team probably healthy to start things off. And his shooting,
healthier than last season. They were a train wreck.
And his value with that shooting might come into play for the Memphis Grizzlies.
Especially with Zach Edey now, where they're going to be playing a lot through, presumably they'll play through him in the post a lot. So
and you have him and Desmond Bane out there at the same time with those guys finding them out there in the perimeter. If they get hot, that those two guys can shoot the basketball.
Yeah.
So that's a really good one for, man, because I thought he would be gone by now, but maybe it was something that they had already had planned, and they were discussing this because I had the number that the opt-out was for. It was
he made $14 million last season.
Option. Memphis declined that 14.8. So I'm very curious to see what he does get now that he looks to be returning to Memphis.
We shall see.
Yes, well, we shall see. So, by the way, the water, you were talking about the water. Did you ever have clearly Canadian water? It was a flavored water. Yeah,
that's not from Rite Aid Refresher.
No,
I don't think so.
It used to be back then.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You can get it from the corner store. You can get it from Rite Aid. It was there, clearly Canadian. You get the wild cherry, and it was.
They don't sponsor this show, so they don't get free promo.
It was fantastic, man. It was some really good water.
If we're looking for a potential, I'd say like similar-ish player to Kennard, I think not as good at the creative stuff, and as actually fallen quite a bit from where he started out.
And don't worry about the free pub. They don't even make it anymore. So don't worry about it.
Landry Shamet, I guess, is someone that maybe can replicate some of that stuff. Now,
That's the name I was telling you about earlier that we didn't get to.
He shot poorly last season, and he's been more of a high 30s guy. He came out, shot amazing for the Sixers in year one under Brett Brown, and in that sort of backup JJ Redick role, right? And then he was moved at the deadline, continued to shoot well for the Clippers the rest of his rookie year, has failed to replicate that level of shooting impact in the years since. Mm-hmm. It's part of why he is available right now. He is not the dead-eye shooter that I think people initially thought he was. So that's probably a more realistic option for a movement shooter and a bench type guy is Landry Shamet. So is there interest in a reunion between Landry and the Sixers? We'll have to see, but I think that's probably on the more reasonable side for a bench shooting option.
Is there concern about the lack of shot creation?
Yes, the defense. Yeah. There are a lot of concerns, but if we're talking about 13th, 14th man, just having somebody who can come off screens and hit shots, there's some obvious appeal there.
And he did it for the Phoenix Suns during that run where they got to the NBA Finals, did it a lot, as you mentioned, with the LA Clippers after the trade went down. And so he's a guy that has established himself as that, but he can't stick. For whatever reason, they're always willing to move him just because of probably those reasons that you're talking about. 6'3", 6'4", can shoot, but he can't do much of anything else. But, man, again, when you need somebody – DeAnthony Melton in that spot versus Landry Shamet, you probably lean more Shamet for the offense, but you lean Melton for that defense on the other end. So there's a give and take.
And I would take Melton. I'd take the ups and downs on offense with him any day over whatever Landry Shamet is
Absolutely.
bringing.
Yeah, so the ups and downs of him, but you're looking at him as a 13th, 14th man on this team. Mm-hmm. That's not a bad one.
Darkness says Shamet got hurt watching this stream, which, again, that's why he's the cheaper Luke Kennard, right? He's available for a reason. He's a 26-year-old who is a shooter that didn't shoot well last year and has been hurt quite a bit since he left Philadelphia. He played 79 games his rookie season, and in the years since, 53, 61, 69, 40, and 46. Not good.
Yeah, not good. So looking at the roster, Tyrese Maxey, KJ Martin, Andre Drummond, Kyle Lowry. You also have Paul George, Kelly Oubre, Ricky Council. That's 7. You have 8, Caleb Martin, McCain, Embiid, obviously, Eric Gordon, and Adem Bona right now is the only other that we have on actual contracts with the Sixers. Justin Edwards on the 2-way. And who was the other one?
David Jones.
David Jones was on the 2-way as well. And we'll see how all of that plays out. But right now we're looking at a total of 12 guys. 12 guys on the roster under contract for the Philadelphia 76ers. So looking at 2 to 3 roster spots with the 2-way guys.
And Daryl often, we were talking about this before the show, Devon, Daryl often goes into the season only carrying 14, likes to leave an open roster spot for flexibility's sake. I would say that's probably likely to happen just because knowing that there might be like a final piece type trade down the road and you might have to do some combinations of players incoming, outgoing. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go that same route once again, go with 14 in the season. So let's say they'll bring in a third player before the season starts. I'd be a little skeptical of that. Not impossible, but I think they'll probably leave some flexibility if they can.
Yep. All right. Well, I have another name to get to, and we will do that when we get back as we just laid out the full length of the roster for the Philadelphia 76ers. But these players are, in fact, as we move on and discuss how they get their jobs or maybe what Daryl Morey in the front office is looking at, we'll do that right now here on the PHLY Sixers podcast, because if they're looking for a job, there's one place for you to go, and that is with our friends from Indeed. They're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, just simply match with Indeed. And that's what Daryl Morey in the front office are trying to do. That's what the agents and their players are trying to do in finding them a job for the upcoming 24-25 season. and that is through Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So if the Philadelphia basketball team is watching, you're looking to fill those 2 roster spots, and you're not giving it to Kyle, Derek, or myself, or Bree, you got to go to Indeed to help find those players. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show right here. And by saying you heard about Indeed on this particular podcast, Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Guys, you've heard about our friends at Coors Light quite a bit over the last few months, but from those day-to-day annoyances to the big stuff, what would we consider trying to figure out who the final free agent on the route? That's just a day-to-day annoyance, right?
Yeah.
Just like, want some finalization. The big stuff is, hey, are they going to get Paul George, or do we have to talk ourselves into Brandon Ingram, right? Like, those are the big things, the big pieces of stress we all go through together on this show, but there is always a better way, a chiller way, and that's by stepping away, choosing chill, and then reaching for an ice-cold Coors Light. You know you're getting an ice-cold Coors Light when the mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans as they hit that perfect temperature. We saw some blue mountains, quite a few blue mountains while we were on the road in Las Vegas, right? Where that was like you're in the desert and you just see this beautiful color, this beautiful symbol of refreshment after being out in the hot sun, 115 degree heat. There were times I was about to overheat. There were times I was pretty upset with the predicament that we were in. 8 days in Las Vegas. But after I took a step back, chose chill, I could then have a cold layered, cold filtered, cold packaged beer with a smooth finish and get that mountain cold refreshment. So when you choose to rise above it all, choose chill, choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
I wonder how Kyle would have been, everybody, as he just talked about that, already dealing with the 8 days. Our 9th day was a travel day, and everything that's happening right now with the outage that happened earlier today with the airports and the internet.
Oh, no.
So you're talking choose and chill. I would have had to carry my man onto the plane because I would have been like,
no, you'd have to bail me out of airport jail because if the technology crash that everyone has experienced today happened while we were on our way home to Philadelphia, I would have had a apocalyptic meltdown.
When I saw that this morning, he was the first one I thought about because we were ready to go anyway. I know how he is in airports with etiquette in general. And then
Devon got to hear my whole spiel on how I hate people that when you're claiming your baggage, and I normally only do carry-ons. I'm not a big check bag guy. We're just there for a while.
Yeah.
When we're getting our bags, and I'm like, Devon, if another person goes up and stands right next to the carousel and is clearly a person that's like a child or a small person that is not picking a bag up off of there, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, divide and conquer. The further you stay back, the more people can be in the circle and go to grab your bag. So that was driving me crazy. On the Vegas front, I think I told you, I have a couple of my good buddies are actually out in Vegas this weekend for a celebration for my one friend that I had to beg out of. I was like, dude, I can't do. I would have basically had to do 12 straight days in Vegas, and you know how bad it was for 8. On their way out, there are 2 sets of them. One couple goes out, and they were delayed on the tarmac for hours with rain. The other one, their flight got pushed back progressively last night because they couldn't find an extra flight attendant. The flight got pushed to 5 a.m. this morning, and then the technology crash happened. So the group chat was like trying to be lighthearted about it, and my buddy was just like, shut the hell up. No jokes. This isn't funny. So Shout out to my buddy Pep, who I think is either in the air or is out in Las Vegas finally.
That's how Kyle would have been.
He's a big Baccarat guy. I hope he hits it big on the Baccarat table while he's out there.
Man, I thought about you when I saw that earlier. I was like, oh man.
I would have lost my damn mind.
That's crazy. It appears that things are corrected and fixed, but there's still a lot of people in the airport trying to get to their destinations. I was talking about a friend earlier who was leaving. They leave tomorrow. I was like, I hope you're good to go for tomorrow.
It seems like they found a fix for whatever this technology issue is. So, I don't know.
Yeah, but the bag thing, Kyle's right. If we're already standing there, we're close. Why do you have to be closer? We're all going for the same thing, just a different color bag probably. What are you doing? So, yeah, that's that. All right. Let's get back to these names. First, let's get to Michael Belfatti, our buddy Mike over there in Portugal with a super chat. Mike says, guys, serious question. What is the experience data on scrap heap minimum guys making a difference in winning a title? Does it ever happen, or is it that just chit chat? Well, I'll just answer. Look at the Dallas Mavericks.
I couldn't tell you the exact data.
I can't. But there is some value. Derrick Jones Jr. got a minimum contract last year from the Dallas Mavericks. He just picked up a 3-year, $30 or $33 million deal with the Los Angeles Clippers. And most Mavericks fans wanted him to stay in Dallas because that's how important he was to that championship run. He was a minimum deal guy, and he got that pretty late in the process. He was a minimum deal guy with Miami, Chicago, basically. I think he was on like 2-year deal, but it would be about $5 to $6 million, not a lot. And he turned himself into a player that just got rewarded for $10+ million with the LA Clippers, replacing Paul George out there in that lineup. So the data, don't know. But to the point of looking at rosters, you can see it. Sam Hauser was a minimum deal guy for the Boston Celtics. You talked about him
Kelly
yesterday.
Oubre was a minimum guy last year.
Yes.
I know that the team did not progress, but that's an example of a high-end outcome on a minimum guy compared to, no shade, but Mo Bamba, for example.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of how it goes. If you sign 5 minimum guys and one of them pops, I think that's probably a good hit rate for a team. And frankly, the way this team is built, it's not going to be the minimum guys that they're relying on. You just need some timely contributions from one of those guys. But I would say in general, this is just like it's hope more than it is like I believe any of these guys that we're talking about today are going to provide playoff level performance. Like Kyle Lowry, even I believe they gave him a little bit more than the minimum to come here last year. That was part of why they were able to get him. And I think he was probably better than a minimum type player, right? Like he was starting. I know he was overextended, but so they're good organizations and teams hunting for titles have to, almost by definition, have to nail some of these signings, because if not, you just simply are not going to be able to field a team that's good enough to win with 3 max players.
And I would have to look at all the champions and try to think about the rosters that they have.
Yeah, and it's not always minimums, right?
No.
Sometimes it's like, hey, this guy may be closer to a $15 million guy, but is on a $5 to $8 million deal this year. There are probably a lot of examples of that sort of phenomenon, right?
Good question, Mike. We appreciate it. But definitely, I don't know the answer overall in terms of the data, but you can just think about some players that contribute to at least a title run and what they may have contributed. Kyle just laid out a few. We mentioned Derrick Jones Jr. last season with the Dallas Mavericks. So that would have more research maybe done with that one overall. Another super chat from Keyshawn Washington saying, "Resign Danny Green."
I love Danny. Loved him while I was here. Loved him as a role player, as a general rule. I don't think Danny's got a whole lot left.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that injury
in the
happened.
Podcast zone at this point.
Yep, podcast zone, doing some TV appearances that he's done. Danny, probably not. All right, let's get to some more names because we have quite a few. We should start just running through a couple of them. Back to the shooting. We've mentioned his name before, and everybody talks about it. Can't play defense, can't rebound.
Another example of a minimum guy.
Yeah.
Gary Payton II on the last Warriors team to win a title, and then he got paid after that.
Going to Portland.
Yeah. So generally, like, to win a title, I think now, especially, again, on teams like the Warriors where it's Steph's making a ton of money, Clay was making a ton of money, Draymond was getting paid. They had Wiggins, who was making a lot of money, even though he was probably shouldn't have been. I believe Gary Payton was a minimum guy then, or close to a minimum guy. If not, you almost have to get a good minimum contract guy on that team.
Yep.
So sorry for interrupting, but
No.
I was trying to go back through some of these other recent title teams to find examples.
All right, here's another name that we've discussed. He can shoot, and I see Money Mar puts the name up there, and I'm going with Davis Bertans as a guy who is 6'8", 6'9". We know he can shoot. He's been all around the association since he really went off in Washington when he was traded from San Antonio to Washington. He had one really good season, and how well he played. Was that the year that the Sixers played? Yeah, that was the year the Sixers played Washington in the first round before being ousted by Atlanta. Russell Westbrook was having that great run for them. Bradley Beal was decent enough, and Davis Bertans was hitting those shots, and you were worried about him in that series. Like, don't let this guy get loose, because he had a really good season. Since then, he got paid big money, but he could not sustain the shooting nor do anything else out there on the basketball floor that was meaningful to victories for whatever club he was with. But now we're talking again, this particular point of free agency, where you're looking at a shooter, a guy who can just flat out shoot, come off the bench, who he may be able to be out there with others that you don't have to worry about his inefficient play with the other stuff. You're just worried about him being a good shooter to stretch the floor and knock down shots when he's out there with the big stars in particular.
Yeah, I don't love him just because I think he's...
Aaron says gross.
I wouldn't go quite that far, right? I mean, we're talking about minimum guys. So if you say, all right, he's the break glass in case of emergency type of shooter, I don't know that he's wired in a way that allows him to just be good morale vibes guy at the end of the bench unless they really need something. And frankly, he only shoots. That's the only thing he does. He's not a passer. He's not a defender. He's not he's especially not a rebounder. He can shoot the hell out of the ball, and he gives you some versatility for that kind of stuff. But is that worth a roster spot at this point for a guy who might get a little surly based on what you ask him to do otherwise? I'm not so sure about that. I think I'd rather shoot for slightly better vibes and maybe a worse shooter. I don't know if that's crazy or not, but I do think, like, at a certain point, we're talking about all these skill sets and whatnot. I do think it's going to matter to have character guys as well, right? When you get into 13, 14, 15, odds are if those guys have to actually play, you might be in a bit of trouble. Like, those are guys that you want. And so we haven't brought up Jeff Doughton yet on the show, right?
Yeah,
but it's part of the reason that maybe you say, hey, we're going to use one of these spots on somebody like Doughton. Like, I don't want to call him young because he's 27, but a guy who's waiting for his opportunity, who you can look at and say, like, just be ready and stay ready. And that he, I think, is in the mindset of, I have to be ready at all times. And if I'm not on the floor, I can be a good, and I don't say this in a mean way, I can be a good towel waver. I will jump up and down when there are big plays, there are dunks, when there's a big defensive stop, whatever it is. Having the attitude to be that guy for anybody who's good enough to make the NBA, that's a tough thing to find in guys who are actually good enough to play. So I think it'd be a challenge to get Bertans to be that sort of guy and also be ready for like every 8 games when he'd actually get on the floor.
So when he got let go, his option was not picked up by the team. He got let go. He was asked about it as he was getting ready to play one of his games for the Olympics, the pre-Olympic games. And they asked him about it. He says, I don't care. I'm focused on this right here. Now, that's the right answer because you have to focus on the game that you're about to step on the floor to play. But to your point of the surliness, that's part of the concern, where how much of that is really in there when you're not getting any minutes. Similar to the conversation we had about Gordon Hayward at the very top, but a way, way different because he's not as important to what you need out there on the floor. So he's one that back and forth. Money Mars says if you can get him and he can find his shot again, that would be the steal of the century. But the question is, can he find that shot again? And we don't know that.
And he's also never healthy either.
Right.
So
yeah. So he's
speaking of
still a lot of
better vibes guy, but also not healthy, also better rebounder, Robert Covington.
Rob name in the chat, but health wise, you missed the last 2.5 months of the season.
Yeah, I don't know that I believe
he play
he
after
can.
Christmas? I'll look.
That's a good question.
You talk about it. I'll look.
But if you're looking at, he's got size. He's been a good positional rebounder throughout his career. Now he's like a true 4. He's not. He used to be kind of a 3-4 hybrid. He's not that anymore. But he's a good rebounder for his position, got good size, and can help them out there. I just don't. He only played, 29 total games.
29, averaged 4 points. And his last game played was December 30th.
That's crazy. So he missed basically 5 months.
Last 5 months of the season.
That's why I honestly thought it was shorter than that. But oh no, I'm looking at a different game log. Never mind. Don't worry about me. So yeah, I mean, if you had any confidence that Cub could stay healthy, I think he fits that ideal where he can make some shots. He's fine in a pretty specialized role. If he doesn't play, I don't think he's a guy who's going to sulk and have bad attitude. As some people have pointed out in the chat, he will wave the towel, right? He's the king of the frosty freeze out. I think he's passed on that responsibility now that it's bricking for chicken and it's later in his career. But yeah, he's certainly been a good vibes guy. So if that's part of the calculus, then wouldn't be crazy to bring him back. But yeah, I don't
would just like him to be in a uniform instead of street clothes.
I don't have confidence in his health at this point. So I would probably say no and roll the dice on somebody else.
All right.
But a lot of these guys, frankly, are health concerns that we've talked about today.
I thought you were going to go with this one, so I'll throw it out there now since we're 51 minutes into the show. What the hell is going on with Precious Achiuwa?
It's a great question. I mean, we've heard very little reporting on his deal. My estimation is at this point, he probably ends up back in New York.
Yep.
Just because their front court options are limited depending on what they do with trades and whatnot from here on out. I don't feel super confident in Precious as a shooter. And part of my issue with him as a Sixers fit is that Drummond is the guy as the backup to Joel. Presumably you want to get Bona some developmental time if Joel's out for whatever reason. So he's not going to get a lot of minutes at center, and I just don't trust the shot enough for him to play regular forward minutes. But on just like a best player available talent level, I think he's certainly one of the best guys left. And if you want to try to, he's got, I don't know if it's a good one. I don't have a feel for it the same way I did for Siakam and OG and Trent and some of these other guys. But he's someone with some front court flexibility, good rebounder relative to his size, right? I think he averaged like 7 rebounds a game in limited minutes for the Knicks end of the year. So if you put him on the floor and he's able to actually play minutes with another big, that would fit the mold of the player that I think people are talking about. But he is a shooter theoretically only, right? I think he's a 31% career shooter, and even that probably overestimates how good he's been there from this point. If he could simply hit corner threes or above the break threes, that'd be a big breakthrough for him. But yeah, I think because we're talking about minimum guys and end of the roster, if you can somehow convince him, then sure. I just think he's going to want more time. He probably wants the ability to play both front court spots, which I don't believe is really going to be available to him here. And can you get a guy who maybe fits in more lineups? I think so. Like the Haywards of the world that you can. Yeah. They already have all these guys that are the small guards, right? And then if you have congestion in the front court, like these guys we're just mashing them together, you can end up running into a lot of roster issues.
Okay,
but someone to keep an eye on. Yeah,
he is, and I wonder what he would look like in a lineup with the big. At the 4 spot, he's at the 4, but with more shooters around him at the 1, 2, and the 3. You got any more you want to focus on?
Well, we've seen Markelle Fultz come up in the chat today. I think we know all the issues with the shot, right? He hasn't ever expanded his range back out to 3 on a regular basis, which is a real shame. based on where he was coming out of college. But when he's healthy, again, all these health questions, that's why these guys are generally available. When he's healthy, still a big athlete in the backcourt. And if you're talking about someone who could potentially pair with a McCain, he's interesting to me because Markelle can take either of the tougher backcourt assignments. He is a good creator, like creative playmaker, does a lot of those little drop-off passes from under the rim. He can make pocket passes out of the pick and roll, finish. I like him.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, he probably looks for an opportunity with more minutes to rehabilitate his value. But I think given the way he was treated on the way out here by the fans, and it could be a clean slate for him coming back, it'd be a fun story at the very least.
Yep. Michael Belfatti with another super chat here says, who improves our title odds most? Me, you, Daniel House, Precious, or Michael?
Michael, I don't know how much your late 80s District 1 AAA experience. I don't know. I forget where Michael, I think Michael played college ball a little bit. So yeah. I don't want to diminish his resume by trying to remember that off the top of my head. I would guess Precious.
Yeah, I would say Precious.
I think that's probably the safe answer out of that group.
Precious. Yep, absolutely. All right. We're about to get into our saying goodbye to everybody.
Do we still have some super chats left, Bree, or are we all we're all tapped out?
That was all of them. Let me run some names at you. Just rapid fire for these names, if you don't.
Sure.
Did Fournier sign?
No, but I feel like he might end up out of the league.
Okay, Fournier, no.
He's a shooter, but that's about it.
Talon Horton-Tucker.
The number one guy in the league who I've never seen play a good game. I remember seeing all the Lakers fan reactions to him when he was a young guy there.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this guy's incredible. And then I watched him play. It's like, have you ever made a shot?
All right.
That's kind of my thing with him.
I think most people understand where we are. Marcus Morris, we'll take him back. If he comes back, no issues there at all. We know who he is. Dennis Smith Jr., more from me. But at this point, yes, I would still, but I don't know where he plays because they have their guards.
Yeah.
Ball handler wise in general. Spencer Dinwiddie.
Yeah.
I'm out.
He's not a vibes guy.
I'm out.
I don't like how he plays. I don't like the vibes. Getting his payments in crypto. Like just there's a little too much weirdness with him. I don't know. One
that off the wall a little bit here. For this one, just because he was he had some workouts there in Las Vegas while we were there. John Wall.
Nah. I wish that he did not have his career end the way that he did.
Yeah.
I hope that he finds his way back to the league. But
yeah.
A guard who couldn't shoot in his best days. I think I'm good on that.
I'm out too. And if the speed is not there like it used to be, I think it's non-existent at this point. All right. That'll do it for us on a Friday.
I do want to remind people. Well, not remind people. I want to let people know. We do have one last super chat. I want to let people know. Starting Monday, we have a new start time. I don't want to screw everyone up, but it's 3 o'clock.
3 is the magic number.
3 is our new regular time moving forward. We will post about it on Twitter for our diehards. I will remind you in Discord and some other places, but 3 o'clock on Monday. Blame the Eagles, guys. If you want to go to the Eagles chat and bother them and say, hey, why'd you move our guys from 2:30? It's all Zach and Bo. So I'm just kidding.
It's all love.
We're rearranging.
Making it work. Football season is starting.
Football season's getting rolling. Training camp coverage coming up. What's that last super chat that we got, Bree?
That was from out of here? Keyshawn, who's the best fit from any past Sixers team era? For right now?
I mean, Kyle Korver would be great.
He would be
a guy
great.
Who can really shoot the ball. You could put Andrew Toney on any team. I mean, it depends on how high up you want to go.
Yeah.
I would love to get Dr. J on this team, right? Or like I'd love to have Allen Iverson. Well, he's a little bit tougher to fit, right?
How would a healthy Elton
Prime
Brand,
Charles Barkley on this team? You want a
Brand.
rebounder? You want somebody banging inside?
Healthy Elton Brand next to Joel Embiid?
Well, healthy Elton Brand never played for the Philadelphia 76ers, unfortunately. I love Elton, but he was cooked when he came here. And he still gave it a good effort.
He did.
He post Achilles, it's tough.
He did. All right, quick roll call for everybody on the way out.
All right. Love to Michael Belfatti, Jess, Darkness. Philly 0024. Phi Chi.
What up, Phi Chi?
Bootzilla. Aaron.
What up, Aaron?
Theo.
What's up, Theo? What's happening?
Money Mar. Keyshawn Washington.
What up, Money?
Glue to Glue. Maine. Brian Knight. Prophet One. Stacy Smith. Jeff Holloman. Cyberdale K. Yeti. Is that? That was a lot for me. I'm not feeling well today on a base level, so that was tough. Who else we got here? My girl Winona. We got Gavin. Gavini. JJ's on home. Chris Rogers.
What up, Nona?
Mr. Reginald Esteban is the one we're ending on today. Thank you to everybody. We got Teacher Got Game as well. Thank you to everybody for coming through. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. And if you hit the thumbs up button, the new start time
3 o'clock
will be 3 o'clock starting Monday, 3 o'clock every day. That's a non-game day moving forward, non-emergency pod. 3 o'clock on Monday. The full squad will be here. We'll see you then. Thank you to super producer Bree as well.
We all silly like the mayor.